So, good morning, everyone. I welcome you to our last lecture of the course, Collective Dynamics of Firms. As you have been informed by my email last night, so we have a special program today. I apologize for not presenting you more new material, but I think if I look back on the whole course, you already learned a lot, so maybe we should spend the time discussing the outline of the course today, answering your questions and comments that you may have. Yeah? Okay. I'd like to start with the evaluation. Which one is this one? Okay. Yes. Okay. So you probably recall that everyone was kind enough to fill in this evaluation sheet, and this is what we get back here. Yeah? And I would like to discuss this with you. First, to give you some feedback, but secondly, because it's also required by the rectorate, right? So, I mean, I have to do it. So the evaluation is anonymous, first of all. So secondly, the evaluation has a number of flaws or drawbacks, which will lead to a complete new layout of this evaluation in the coming years. So this is the last time where we did this with the punch-stamped sheets and so on. All right, so there were 6 people of this course who returned their evaluation sheets. That's very nice, but you can already guess that there is a bad statistics on this. So that's the first thing. The second thing is every elective course is evaluated better than a core course, right? Why is this? Because you have decided yourself to participate in this course, right? That's a difference to the core course, at least for the MTech students. So they have to participate in this core course, whereas in the elective course, that was your free decision. Consequently, and that's a psychological issue, yeah, you usually rate a course that you have chosen yourself better. You know? This is not to question your own decision, right? So that's a psychological issue. We know this from any other survey or on voluntarily work and so on, that people give a better judgment about things if they voluntarily decide to do this as compared to they are paid for something, right? So, okay, let us go through this. So this is the number of MTech students, 4, the number of physics students, 3, I think, except of Wahan, there's no other physics student, right? What are you? What department are you in? MTech. Okay, no, there are Alexander Gott. Okay, so I'm one person from Mass, and then you see here most of them were master students. So I scroll through this. So there is the first block. 1, 2, 3 are the rector's question, and this is all. Yeah. I have a question. It's interesting because you said 6 people gave the. Yeah. And the numbers add up to 8. Yes, you are. People and also in the other bachelor or master program. In gender. That's interesting. Yes. I would assume it's 8, yes. Yeah, it's 8. I don't know. Maybe I was misled by this, but maybe not everyone has crossed his or her gender, right? So, okay, you are right. Thanks a lot. Yeah. There are 8 people. Okay, this is how it looks like. You see, the first 3 questions, the answers are returned to the rector. Yeah? And if there are problems, with the course, then of course this will be discussed with the study delegate and the professor, and in urgent cases also with the rector and the professor. So this was all very positive. This is about the language, this is about the course material, and this is about commitment to good teaching. If you have comments or questions, then we can discuss this. So then we come to the second part, the blue one, which is asked by MTech. So well structured. So people are not that optimistic about this. I come to this in a moment when we look into the personal comments. That's on another sheet, right? You could also write something. Learning objectives, so this is also something which I would like to discuss afterwards. What were the learning objectives of this course, because it seemed to be not so very clear. Or but maybe I should do it right now, or let's go through this first. So sufficient scientific details, also positive. Real current issues, that's positive. Course material helped me to follow the lectures. So there, of course, I mean, this means one person, right? So, but here I would certainly like to know what this person may expect here. Maybe a script or something like this, right? So, I don't know exactly, but that would be of interest to us, right? So, encourage active participation. That's also like in the normal range. Motivated, think independently, instructor deployed, media, bam, 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 fine. Enthusiasm. So here you see maybe a bimodal distribution. Huh? There is a peak of this. Why is there a lack of enthusiasm on your side? So that could be another question, number 3, right? So, and then let me go to the last slide here. No, not this. Okay, here. Practical work, 50-50. I think you usually appreciate it. So this refers to Pavlin, also positive. And most of you recommended the course, so that's fine. I show you the second sheet first. So this is, there's place for comments, right? Someone, or 2 people in your particular case wrote something here, and we read this first and then we discuss it. The course is very interesting. Possible improvement would be to make the learning objective more clear. This also refers to one of the questions here. For example, being more explicit about what we must focus on, what is not important. Okay. All of the material is interesting, but it's not possible to understand and remember everything at all the levels. That's certainly true. So this was the second comment. Excellent slides, well structured, outlook further material, very helpful. Okay, very good. So let me go to this question about the learning objective. I switch to this other one, or do you need to read this again? No, certainly not. But this is how we get it, yeah, in these PDF files. So let me go to this. So the learning objectives. So what should you learn in this course? According to my understanding, the most important thing is to get a quantitative approach towards dynamics of firms. So we have courses in the department, and the MTech students know this quite well, where the focus is on strategies of individual firms, on how you position yourself in the market, and all these important issues. But these courses lack the big picture, the overall picture, right? What do we see in terms of regular patterns if we look into a whole economy. And that was the focus of this course. So the first learning objective was to get this picture, to understand that on the macroscopic level, which is the systemic level, we see patterns emerging that you would not guess from looking into case studies, right? So there are regularities in the development of films, right? That's something extremely interesting. So that's the first learning objective. The second learning objective was how to quantify this. And we did this in two different cuts. So the first one looking into data, and the second one looking into models. And in the ideal case, we were also able to recover some of the stylized facts from the data analysis with the models. So that means at the end, you should have gotten skills, both on the practical side. In particular, if you are confronted with data sets, you know how to handle this, you know what RStudio is, you have no fear to use these things. I mean, of course, you need to educate yourself. There is no question about this. But so this entry barrier, yeah, that's hopefully gone. So. And the second thing is you learn how to model these kind of things. So the models, if you are a bit more general, the models can be applied in various areas. But the basic understanding of how to pose an agent-based model, how to extend agent-based models, that was taken in this course here. So that's the learning objective from my side. So basically, it refers to basic science, data analysis, and modeling, with an emphasis on a pattern that you would not see and not know about if you would not have taken this course. So that's my comment. Maybe you want to comment on this learning objectives and what was clear and what was not clear. Any question about this? Is this a clear learning objective or not? I don't know. I think, if I'm correct, in the first lecture, I was also mentioning some of these things. No? What this course is about and what this course is not about. I remember that I have taken some of this. Does this answer your question about the learning objective? If not, then it's a perfect time to now tell your own opinion about this. No. Okay, so then the second issue. So yeah, here, as I said, okay, I would like to know from this person what is the expectation actually, because we did a lot of work to first of all revise the slide, secondly provide additional hints in the notes, then provide you with additional material and so on. So there was, where was this other? Here. So the instructor aroused my enthusiasm for the subject and motivated me. Okay. So you took the course, but you were not really enthusiastic about it. That's the message, basically. So this, first of all, relates to expectations. No? Usually students have expectations when they attend the course, and these expectations are not met. So why should they be enthusiastic about it, right? Yes, of course, but this is, I mean, if you compare the distribution, then you see, okay, this one is different. So therefore, okay, I would like to, maybe learn a bit more about this. Someone who wants to comment on this? What I thought, okay, let's assume at some point in time you find out that the content is of no interest to you. Yeah? You are the physicist, and then you probably are not interested in firms per se, and it took you like 6 to 8 weeks to get to this point. Well, what you can still learn is how to analyze this data, how to build an agent-based model, where to put in economic assumptions as compared to basic dynamics assumptions about stochasticity and these kind of things. So my enthusiasm at some point would then come from the fact that I learned a lot here, right? So different things. And please also recall that there are the self-study tasks, which are partly, I would say, they're not demanding, but they require your time and effort to spend. That's not something you can do in like 5 minutes or so, right? And this is not about reading something as in other courses or discussing with your neighbor about something. This is about practical skills. So my personal hope is that everyone here, independent of the subject and the enthusiasm about the subject, got a solid feeling about stochastic processes, what's their role in certain agent-based models, and so on. That's the idea of this. Yeah? So.
I have a suggestion.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm enthusiastic. It's not a nice situation. I think
no one will be blamed for this. I mean, we need to understand it, right? So.
I think that you have pretty good material. There is the videos from the past lectures, and maybe it could be interesting if we have a kind of project.
Yeah.
If you are involved more than in the exercises,
yeah.
the kind of project that we choose, applying the concepts and correlating with the objectives.
Yes.
In this way, everybody is going to get more enthusiastic.
That's okay. Can you take a note? That's a good idea. Why didn't I follow this suggestion earlier? First thing, in every single course in MTech, you have a project, right? So that's a problem. So I did not, on purpose, wanted to create the same situation for you as a student, again, as in whatever supply chain management and all these kind of things. So, and even Professor Sonnet told me the other day that he has switched to projects now, which had to do with the exam and the grading and these kind of things, right? So I wanted to avoid this situation. I did not want to be the whatever 31st course where you also have to do a project. So, and for me, it was important that, for example, if you're from different departments, as this is the case here, that you could follow the course independently. I mean, I'm not sure how it was this year, but last year there were, I think, 2 or so students who were abroad. And they took still the course, so they followed these video lectures, they did the exercise, and then they showed up in the summer for the exam. Okay, that's also possible. Therefore, I thought, okay, something that educates you on a solitary basis and not in a teamwork, that would be appropriate. I'm also a bit skeptical about projects. And when we started with this course, we had projects, and 3 times a semester you had to submit this project, and you did it in a group work. So it was never clear to me who did what, right? So my assumption was that at the end, the only one person who was able to treat some data did it, and all the others just signed in, and that was it. I wanted to avoid the situation. Yeah? If you want to see some like practical applications of this, then of course the chair has ample tasks to offer where you handle real data and apply this to real questions. Then you do a semester work like what Vahan is doing or what Alex did before. That's possible, right? But I didn't want to make this the outline of the course. That's my personal opinion, right? And by the way, I think that with these weekly exercises and with the self-study talks, at the end, personally, you do a lot more, right? So it's just my personal impression than with a project that you have to hand in at the end. Are there other comments? Yeah.
Be motivated following the course either in class neither my enthusiasm, but I mean, it was also not the aim.
Yeah.
It's like I'm more in what you
Yeah.
before direction, specific firms development, but I'm still it's interesting. It's interesting for me, but
It's not really enthusiastic. Yeah.
it's not really enthusiastic.
Yeah. I understand.
Otherwise I would go in this direction.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Okay. Further comments or questions? Okay. So these were, I think, the 2 points. So then, was there anything else? No. Okay. So then, let me come to this last question. What should I learn for the exam and what is not really necessary, right? So this was one of the comments. So regarding the exam, what we certainly will not do is to ask you for specific details of deriving solutions of equations or something like this. Here I really make a difference between the physics department and the MTech department. This course is offered in the MTech department, so that means for me it's very important that you understand the concept behind this. So that's the first thing, that you are also able to argue about this. Let's take the model of Simon and Idiri or something like this. So what did they change compared to Gebra? Right? So that's something you should really understand. Why did they do it? Second question. Third question is, what changed in the outcome? So these are the kind of things that you have to argue. Yeah? Of course, I would expect that you write down a dual Simon distribution as an equation. That's not a big deal from my perspective. Yeah? But did one of you ever looked into this paper by Simon where he derived it? Someone do it? So that's a very mathematical paper, right? So once you touch it, then you see, okay, that's very heavy stuff. This is not requested. You should understand what has changed and what is the outcome, the result, in terms of the distribution. And then, of course, you should argue of whether this is a better result than the previous one compared to what. Yeah? So that's then more about the argumentation. Of course, I mean, we agree that entry dynamics is very important. Yeah? But are we, at the end, when we look into this skewed distribution, are we able to really distinguish the Joule-Simon distribution from a tail and a power law, or some part of the log-normal distribution, yeah, stretched part? So is it really possible, right? So these are questions where you should think about. Right? Okay. That's the kind of what you should know and what you should not know, right? So it is also appropriate that you recall some of the basic arguments in order to tell what you have learned. Remember that for the exam, there are 3 different ingredients. Ingredient 1 is you had to pass the 3 online tests. Third one is yet to come. The second thing is you had to participate in these self-study talks, which you did, I assume. And then, of course, you had to follow this lecture, right? That means we will certainly ask questions that are related to the self-study talks. And this means that you should recall a bit of the practical things that you did, right? What's the command for the Kolmogorov-Smirnov test, right? For the one-sided versus the two-sided. What's the difference between these two, right? So if you get an output like pum, 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 for D, some number, so is it now a confirmation of the null hypothesis or a rejection of the null hypothesis? You should be able to understand some sort of code and to interpret this. These are skills that you should have and that we certainly refer to in the exam. So then, I mean, we can certainly discuss more about what should we know for the exam and what is interesting but not really needed. It's a bit difficult for me to give this in abstract words. So, of course, the professor is always convinced that everything is important, right? Otherwise, why should I spend my time on this? But that's certainly not the case, right? So, I mean, what is important and what not? There we had these questions at the end of each lecture, which should guide you somehow to the important points. Right? So if you want to find out what's important, then I would start with these questions and would double check, am I able to answer these questions? Right? But as I said, I would also go and look into all the self-study tasks and will understand, okay, what did I learn from this? You know? So there are a few boxes, yeah, like learning tasks and questions, and these boxes you should basically check, yeah, with your own skills. Okay, I think we should not follow further discussion on this general level. It might be more appropriate if you ask your questions, and then, if needed, I have all these slides here on the computer, then we can put it up and can discuss it together. Yeah, is it, yeah? Or do you have further general comments on the course? Maybe I finish with a general comment. If you want to do your master's thesis with us, then you have to take the 3 courses that we offer, and the 3rd course is economic networks, right? So, systems dynamics, which is a core course, collective dynamics of first, and economic networks. That's maybe an important hint for you as well. And I also explained, I think some time before, that we see this as these courses as different levels of formalization and abstract thinking, and economic network certainly is the most abstract and demanding one, right? So, but it's also the one that is very close to research. Right? So this is a bit more to basic knowledge and to skills. And systems dynamics and complexity is about dynamic thinking in general. Okay, so then with this we start with specific questions. Yeah, is this fine? Yeah, so Alex, you want to start?
Yeah, I have one question concerning lecture 10.
Mm-hmm.
Where we discussed the
Shall I do it like this? I open it and then...
Yeah, would be nice if you...
Yeah, let's see. So, 10, yeah?
Yeah, lecture 10.
So, which slide?
The most appropriate slide would be 11.
11.
It was the
This
second
one.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do we see on this graph? We see that after the immersion of a core,
Mm-hmm.
there are at a certain time that crashes, and these
Yes.
occur because the firm in the core gets
Is selected and then the core breaks down,
but
correct.
it's exactly displayed in this graph. What is on the y-axis? I suppose
On the x-axis first is a time, right, so that's a good question. We have 2 different times here in this model. Yeah, maybe I should recall this. There's a dynamics on 2 time scales. So on one time scale, which is plotted here, that's related to the n, you modify the network. And on the other time scale, you let the nodes relax, right? Remember, for every node, there is a dynamic, xi dot equals something, right? So, and you first let the nodes relax to their equilibrium state, which is on a short time scale, and then on a larger time scale, you modify the network after the node have relaxed. Then you modify the network, the node relax again, you modify the network, the node relax again. So there are 2 time scales involved. One at which the nodes reach an equilibrium state, and the other one at which I modify the network. So what's plotted here, though, first of all, this is the number of modifications of the network, if you want so, and this is the average density of the link.
exactly.
Yeah.
The average density is number of divided by the number of total links, which scales with the n, right?
Mm-hmm, that's correct.
So, but in amplitude of the crashes?
So the M is related to the, first of all, the M is related to the probability to assign a link randomly, right? I think this was on the previous slide or somewhere. No, these are the pictures.
There is M is equal to P and also.
Where do you see this?
Right in the middle. M is equal to
Yes,
P.
exactly, exactly. So, okay.
N is constant, so
N is constant, and the P basically varies. So, and this is, of course, what you see here is the average density L of the links is, of course, related to the M. If you choose a low P, then the network is quite sparse, and you have a low density here. So, if you choose a higher P, then the network gets quite dense, right? So that's a. So now the question is, why are these crashes and recoveries more visible if you have a smaller M? That's the question.
because I would suppose that it cancels out because you have
Yeah.
the fraction and average link density, the numerator and the denominator, they both scale with
Yeah, yeah. But this is really the average links. No, that's the average number of links per node. Yeah. Well,
exactly.
so, okay. And if I have a larger P, then of course I have a denser network, right? So therefore, if I increase the M or the P, then this L gets up. So, okay. Why is the crash larger for a sparser network? That's very clear. I mean, if you have a dense network, then you can assume that we are part of one cycle, but you may be also part of another cycle. Remember, there are many cycles coexisting, in fact. Yeah? Once you are part of one of the cycles, then your production or your innovation is boosted by the others, by input of the others. Someone is removed from the system, a new node enters the system and is randomly linked to other nodes. And that means it's also, with a certain probability, linked to you again, even that you are already part of the cycle, right? So that means you are then part of different cycles. And therefore, if you are part of different cycles, which occurs only for denser networks, then of course a crash in one of these cycles will not affect the system as much as if we have a sparse network. No, that's understandable. If we have only a few links, then the system is very vulnerable. That's correct. That's what you see here. What you also see is, I mean, that's one message. The other message is, how long does it take before a cycle emerges? You see here, like, for this red curve, it's about 4,000 iterations. So here it's only 1,000 iterations, and here it's only like 200 iterations, right?
But in the self-study, we were asked to simulate this.
Yes?
Well, my results, our
Mhm.
results were like, the amplitude of the crashes were more or less the same for all ends. That's why I wondered.
Aha, okay. So that's something I cannot answer, because then we have to look into the self-study again.
Yeah, but if you look at the average link density,
Yeah.
you have a higher, if there's a crash,
Mm-hmm.
more links get severed if M is higher,
Mm-hmm.
clear, but also the total number of links is much higher for higher M.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I said I would suppose it cancels out.
Yeah, that's something. Then I have to recheck the self-study tasks again, yeah? Because I'm not so sure that you have defined the average L the same way as this was done in the paper.
I think there's really
There could be a difference, right? So, but you understand why denser networks are a bit more robust against these crashes, yeah? Because you can be part of different cycles, hopefully. Yeah, but so that's something we then have to find out. I can also look into the paper, and we find then how the L is defined, right? I think that's the issue. So other questions? Yeah, I know this is the hard part now, because to ask a question, basically means that you have gone through all of the lectures, which you certainly didn't do for today, because the exam is only in August, right? I can understand that. But there might be things that you want to rediscuss also about the different topics. What do we need to learn from whatever, the Marx model or something like this? Yeah? I can also open the syllabus and when we go through this, if you want. Please, yeah.
One more question with this.
Yeah?
It's in the same lecture, it's slide 15.
15, yes.
It's the advanced model.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we start with an empty graph. Before we started with a random graph.
Mm-hmm.
Why so? Well, it's kind of a bias if you start with a different network. Why do we choose an empty graph in this model?
We choose the empty graph because in this model we were basically interested in what I call the path-dependent process here. Okay? The path-dependent process is best shown if I have a sequence of decisions where the next decision is based on the previous decision and so on and so on and so on, right? So that's the meaning of path dependence. If I start with a random network, then the path dependence is basically mixed with the randomness of the network. I can create random lock-ins, yeah, which are not path dependent. In order to avoid this, we started like this. And this, by the way, the assumption for the economists is usually to start with an empty network, because here we talk about strategic network formation. And strategic network formation means at any time the agents decide about a link, right? So whereas, Alex, if you start with a random network, then you have the idea, okay, there was a time when no one thought about creating links, and then there was another time where they were very curious about why they have the link, right? So that's an assumption that you can basically that you can hardly defend, right? Because then you assume, okay, there was, yeah, in previous times, firms never cared about, well, with whom they had a link, therefore we can assume it's random. So that's it's an issue of argumentation. But the most important thing is here the path-dependent process. Maybe I should open the syllabus and then we go through this. And if you have specific questions for the content, then it would be good if you ask them. So, where's the syllabus? Oh, the syllabus is on Mendeley, right? Oh, or maybe it's here. No. Okay, I don't know where the, oh, outline here, no. Syllabus. Okay. I don't see the latest version here, but let's basically, that was something else. So, syllabus. So, this was not the most recent one. It was from last year, but basically it's kind of similar. So, questions or comments regarding the first part, data and empirics? I already answered the question, should I know some R commands? The answer is yes. So, okay. So, regarding the distributions, you should basically know what kind of distributions we have discussed. I would assume that at least the structure, the mathematical structure of these distributions can be written down. So you know what the power law is, you know what a normal distribution is, and then once you know that, then you also know what a log normal distribution is, right? So these are equations that we assume you should be able to write down. So, but more important are the stylized facts that we have tried to recover here. So, it's about the size dependence of the variance, for example. This was one of the important things. There was one slide where we mentioned what we have not found in the data, namely that the mean value doesn't depend on the size classes. So that's something you should also look into, right? Because it helps you a bit better understanding what we did. So then second part is, okay. Regarding the maximum likelihood estimation, I do not assume that you can calculate this in the exam, even that we spend a lot of time doing this on the slides. This was to give you a hint that it's doable, right? So, but what you should understand from the whole part is how is this related, the maximum likelihood estimation, to the testing of the distribution, right? Because these are two sides of the same problem, right? So if you test a distribution, then you assume that you know the sigma and the mu, right? But the maximum likelihood estimation only tells you what's the sigma and what's the mu, conditional on the distribution, right? So that's a very important thing. So then regarding the stochastic growth models, there I think you should understand the difference between additive and multiplicative noise, and why was an assumption like multiplicative noise chosen for the G-Bright model, right? So why? What was the reason behind this? You know? So these are things that we should certainly that we have certainly discussed. Then regarding the entry and exit dynamics, so there we discussed also some stylized facts from the data. So is this a minor or is this a major effect? That's something we have already shown. And then how does the distribution changes if we include, for example, entry dynamics, as in the case of the Simon model, right? So regarding this competition and cooperation part, the Marx model, I would, for example, expect that you are able to write down the competition equation. That's the result. It appeared 3 times in the lecture, right? Always the same equation. That's something you should be able to write down. So then you probably, or in the most simplest form, but the alpha was the same and so on, right? So then you should be able to understand how we got there. There were these 2 processes, the limited resource and the positive feedback, right? So I explained this 3 times in the same lecture. Yeah? You should understand the basics. And then we gave an economic meaning to the selection value, which was the cost price. And here I would assume that you are able to explain the economic meaning of the cost price. There were 2 slides just on the cost price. How is the cost price written? It depends on the exploitation rate and on the organic composition of capital and so on, right? So that you understand this slide. There's no derivation, but you should understand what is the economic meaning of this, what's the story, and how I, as the entrepreneur or the capitalist, can increase my profit. What should I do, given that this is a selection process, okay? My suggestion is we just continue, and then we close if there are no further questions, right? So, inequality distribution, though that's, I think, was a lecture that you were only recovering yourself by means of the handout and last year's video recording. Are there particular questions? So, what's the Gini coefficient? What's the Lorentz curve? Yeah. What's the meaning of inequality, basically? There was also the self-study task where you had looked into a growing log normal distribution, right? And then you had to plot the inequality. Right? And then, I mean, once you did this exercise yourself, then you better understand what people discuss in the newspapers, yeah, that inequality has again increased this year, right? So, okay. It's not a real surprise for you, right? So, okay. So, once you understood the basic dynamics of this, then, I mean, then you can start thinking of what kind of processes do I need to decrease inequality. Yeah, that's not the topic of the exam, but that's the topic maybe for those people who complain about increasing inequality. So I would like to hear from them what they have in mind, right? So, okay. So then adoption of behavior. This was then about these polar processes. There we discussed the simple polar process, and there was a more advanced model by Brian Arthur, where you had these R and S agents, and each of them had a preference to either iPhone A or iPhone B or something, right? So, and then there is no need to redo these equations. That's not the important point. But there was a graph, as you recall, which gave us an upper and a lower bound. And once the trajectory has hit this, then the process was locked in. That means it was not reversible. After that point in time, you will not see a community switching back to some other gadget once they are locked in there, right? So that was the result of this model. And I think you should understand this. That's basically, it's a modification of the simple polar process. But even more important is the question that we then discuss afterwards. How realistic is this? Yeah? For the MTech students, I mean, that's the most important question. Do we have to live with this? Or what can we do in order to mitigate this situation, right? There were a few slides why the simple login processes are wrong in some sense, right? So that's something I recommend for you to look up for the exam as well, that you can critically discuss about the importance of login effects, right? Because you as a company, let's assume you are a company, that then basically, you could close the book, so that was it then. Yeah? If this was a real economy, then you can basically go home, right? Because there was nothing you can do. But in fact, you can do a lot, you as a company. And you should understand, okay, what are the additional dimensions that I can do or use or exploit, right? So, for example, innovations are not considered there. So there's also the lifetime of the gadget or these kind of things is not considered there. You can influence the lock-in effect before it actually locks in, by modifications of the incentive schemes. If you buy the iPhone, then you get whatever, a whole Apple computer plus the full software for free, or those kind of things, right? So. Okay, yeah, that was basically it. And number 12, as I said, we dropped this year, right? So, okay.
But this lecture are going to be available after?
No, because we didn't include it in the course right now. As I mentioned in my email, it's a bit more technical. I'm a bit hesitant to just give you the slides without further explanation, because I do not want to confuse you. So then I would rather like to present this here and say, well, this is the difference to the previous adoption models. The difference, by the way, is not so much in the dynamics. The difference is in the formalism. That's more of interest for the physicists. Then we write what we would basically do for stochastic dynamics. We write down a master equation. We have transition rates and so on. That's the better or the more appropriate formalism to address this in a stochastic context. So that's what you can learn from there. Okay, further questions, content-wise? Yeah, please. Yeah.
Concerning the Lorentz curve and the symmetry,
Mm-hmm.
because I was curious about this point,
Mm-hmm.
because I couldn't really figure out which distribution, or other way around. If the Lorentz curve is not symmetric,
Mm-hmm.
what can the underlying distributions are? I think we discussed in the lecture that the only thing we can say, if it's symmetric, we cannot reject a log normal.
That's correct. That's correct. Yes. Yes.
But is there something more we can say?
Not really. So the log normal distribution usually results in a symmetric Lorentz curve. Yes, that's correct. So, but it really then depends on. It really depends on features of the distribution. You cannot give a general explanation for this. By the way, just for your information, if you look into the Lorentz curve, then you should notice that there are two axes. One is the percentage of the firms that own a percentage of the are responsible for a particular share of the sizes, right? So that's a normal scale. So we now talk about Lorentz curves that can be only seen on the logarithmic scale. You may want to think about this. You know? So that means the Lorentz curve is so steep that you do not see anything if you plot this on a normal curve. Right? That's something you can read. So what kind of economy is behind this? You know? That the inequality is so huge that I cannot really see this in a normal scale. Right? So, yeah, that's something that we did in our own research when we talked about ownership concentration. This can be only discussed on logarithmic scales. Because everything is in this 0.1% range. You know? 1% of all firms own 99% of all revenue, something like this, right? So that means your Lorentz curve looks like this. You know? So you don't see anything in a normal scale. This is for those who are afraid of inequality. You know? So the real inequality, if you go out and look into it, is much, much, much larger than you can plot in any Lorentz curve. Right? That's the message of it. Okay. Other questions? Comments? So if this is not the case, then thank you very much for your attention and for participating in the course. And I hope that you can convince a few students of MTech or maybe the physics department to attend the course next year. One of the lessons I learned is that I will not do this video recording again. Right? Which is, by the way, the MTech students know already the conclusions that my colleagues have drawn some years ago, right? So currently, I think I'm the only one. You know? This was also for me the last time. So I appreciate more to have students in the lecture rather than following these courses, this course at some other time. You know? Okay. So I wish you good luck with the exam. The exam is in August, as far as I was told, and then you just come here. There is no need to have any whatever material with you. You know, a pencil is enough. So, and then you just answer these questions. So they are with A, B, C, D. There is no multiple choice question. You really have to go through the material. And you should write also in a way that we afterwards are able to read this. Right? Yeah. Some students lost a considerable number of points because we could not read what they were because they have written, right? So this is my personal advice to you. Otherwise, I think if you really follow the course, the exam is doable. This is not something that's beyond your expectations, maybe. Okay, thank you very much. And then I hope I see some of you maybe in some of the other courses. Yeah? Bye.
You said 6 people gave the...
Yeah.
And the numbers add up to 8.
Yes, you're...
People and also in the other bachelor or master program.
Oh, that's interesting, yes. I would assume it's 8, yes. Yeah, it's 8. I don't know. Maybe I was misled by this, but maybe not everyone has crossed his or her gender, right? So, okay, you are right. Thanks a lot. Yeah, there are 8 people. Okay, this is how it looks like. You see, the first 3 questions, the answers are returned to the rector. Yeah? And if there are problems with the course, then of course this will be discussed with the study delegate and the professor, and in urgent cases also with the rector and the professor. So this was all very positive. This is about the language, this is about the course material, and this is about commitment to good teaching. If you have comments or questions, then we can discuss this. So then we come to the second part, the blue one, which is asked by MTech. So well structured. So people are not that optimistic about this. I come to this in a moment when we look into the personal comments. That's on another sheet, right? You could also write something. Learning objectives, so this is also something which I would like to discuss afterwards. Yeah, what were the learning objectives of this course, because it seemed to be not so very clear. Or but maybe I should do it right now. Or let's go through this first. So sufficient scientific details, also positive. Real current issues, that's positive. Course material helped me to follow the lectures. So there, of course, I mean, this means one person, right? All of the material is interesting, but it's not possible to understand and remember everything at all the levels. That's certainly true. So this was the second comment. Excellent slides, well structured, outlook further material, very helpful. Okay, very good. So let me go to this question about the learning objective. I switch to this other one, or do you need to read this again? No, certainly not. But this is how we get it, yeah, in these PDF files. So let me go to this. So the learning objectives. So what should you learn in this course? According to my understanding, the most important thing is to get a quantitative approach towards dynamics of firms. So we have courses in the department, and the MTech students know this quite well, where the focus is on strategies of individual firms, on how you position yourself in the market, and all these important issues. But these courses lack the big picture, the overall picture, right? What do we see in terms of regular patterns if we look into a whole economy? And that was the focus of this course. So the first learning objective was to get this picture, to understand that on the macroscopic level, which is the systemic level, we see patterns emerging that you would not guess from looking into case studies, right? So there are regularities in the development of firms, right? That's something extremely interesting. So that's the first learning objective. The second learning objective was how to quantify it. All right, so there were 6 people of this course who returned their evaluation sheets. That's very nice, but you can already guess that there is a bad statistics on this. That's the first thing. The second thing is every elective course is evaluated better than a core course, right? Why is this? Because you have decided yourself to participate in this course, right? That's a difference to the core course, at least for the MTech students. So they have to participate in this core course, whereas in the elective course, that was your free decision. Consequently, and that's a psychological issue, yeah, you usually rate a course that you have chosen yourself better. Yeah? This is not to question your own decision, right? So that's a psychological issue. We know this from any other survey or on voluntarily work and so on, that people give a better judgment about things if they voluntarily decide to do this as compared to they are paid for something, right? So, okay, let us go through this. So this is the number of MTech students, 4, the number of physics students, 3, I think, except of Vahan, there's no other physics student, right? What are you? What department are you in? MTech. Okay, no, there are Alexander Gott. Okay, so I'm one person from Mars, and then you see here most of them were master students. So I scroll through this. So there is the first block. 1, 2, 3 are the rector's question, and this is all. Yeah.
I have a question. It's interesting.
So good morning, everyone. I welcome you to our last lecture of the course Collective Dynamics of Firms. As you have been informed by my email last night, so we have a special program today. I apologize for not presenting you more new material, but I think if I look back on the whole course, you already learned a lot, so maybe we should spend the time discussing the outline of the course today, answering your questions and comments that you may have. Yeah? Okay. I'd like to start with the evaluation. Which one is this one? Okay. Yes. Okay. So you probably recall that everyone was kind enough to fill in this evaluation sheet, and this is what we get back here. Yeah. And I would like to discuss this with you. First, to give you some feedback, but secondly, because it's also required by the rectorate, right? So, I mean, I have to do it. So the evaluation is anonymous, first of all. So secondly, the evaluation has a number of flaws or drawbacks, which will lead to a complete new layout of this evaluation in the coming years. So this is the last time where we did this with the punch-stamped sheets and so on. Right? So, but here I would certainly like to know what this person may expect here. Maybe a script or something like this. Right? So I don't know exactly, but that would be of interest to us, right? So, encourage active participation. That's also like in the normal range. Motivated, think independently, instructor deployed, media, bam, 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 fine. Enthusiasm. So here you see maybe a bimodal distribution. Huh? There is a peak of this. Why is there a lack of enthusiasm on your side? So that could be another question, number 3, right? So, and then let me go to the last slide here. No. Not this. Okay, here. Practical work, 50-50. I think you usually appreciate it. So this refers to Pavlin, also positive. And most of you recommended the course, so that's fine. I show you the second sheet first. So this is, there's place for comments, right? Someone, or two people in your particular case wrote something here, and we read this first and then we discuss it. The course is very interesting. Possible improvement would be to make the learning objective more clear. This also refers to one of the questions here. For example, being more explicit about what we must focus on, what is not important. Okay,